Hello.
Hello.
Okay. This is going to drive me nuts. The angle on this screen. Okay, that's better.
Come on.
Okay. Check your Instagram.
Yeah, just a second.
She's got to join on Instagram and then we can actually hear each other. So there we go. Unable to join the fudge.
What?
Joined, unable to join. I don't understand you. You are so weird. Every freaking time Instagram does this. That's why I invited her. I invited her so I could go live with her. Every freaking time Instagram. Every freaking time with Instagram.
They're
Every
dumb.
time. They got drama over there. I don't even know what they're doing.
Right?
They're being obnoxious. That's what they're doing. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 43 of Murder in the Moonlight. We are going to be discussing the Axeman of New Orleans. This episode is fucking cursed. I am telling you. We have tried to do this episode so many times, and every time we have gotten sick or something else, like
Or a hurricane hits.
or hurricane hit, or it's been ridiculous. So, yeah. This program is intended for mature audiences. Viewer discretion is advised. We talk about murder, we swear, it's all that fun stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Please be advised. Okay.
All right. So, the Axeman of New Orleans. I kind of wanted to do this episode because I live in New Orleans. And so I definitely am very curious about this case and have read about it and listened to podcasts about it in the past anyway, just because I'm curious. And thought it would be great to do for the show. Which is why it's now a cursed episode, because we've tried to do it so many times.
Yeah, the first time we tried to do it, I think we ended up rescheduling it like 3 times, and then I just gave up.
Right.
Like, this is so not worth it. I give up.
Mm-hmm.
Screw
Yeah,
it.
it's just not going to happen. So then it was like, let's try that again, maybe. And then again, we got sick.
Yeah.
So that was dumb. So we're going to give it a try today. Hopefully it'll work. We're actually here and not sick or passed out. So, I mean, that's a great start.
Yeah, it is. It's a pretty... There, look, we have our cute little logo up. It still did not fix the fact that this is making me do an overlay. I hate you. I don't hate you, but I hate you. Nobody cares that we're live with the restream. It won't let me take off the overlay. Oh my gosh.
Dumb.
Put up one overlay for Christmas and it thinks it needs an overlay for every single video. I am still grumpy about this.
Right.
But like I said, we do have our cute little logo.
I like it.
On when people are looking at Facebooky and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So,
all right.
Hi, people.
Oh, hello. Yeah. So now the Axeman of New Orleans was mostly it started in 1917 at the end of the year and continued through 1918 through October of 1919. There is some speculation that he actually started in 1910 and 1911, but the evidence is inconclusive. So we're just going to kind of concentrate on what we know to be from the Axeman of New Orleans, which would be the 1918 through 1919 murders and attacks. Not all of them were murders. But I was listening to a really interesting podcast, and we will have that in the. I will send that information on this podcast to Emily to put in our notes on where we got some of the information from that talked about the 1910 and 1911 attacks that they think were connected to the Axeman of New Orleans as well. Very interesting stuff, but we're just not going to necessarily go over that in this episode because it's inconclusive if it was actually him. So very much, I've heard him described as being like New Orleans's Jack the Ripper, and it's just like Jack the Ripper, where there are earlier attacks that are a little different, used a different weapon, could be the start of him like getting into this murder spree and being like, yeah, this is the thing I want to do, before he honed in what his exact MO was, and then potentially went to jail for a few years and then got released from jail and started up again. But it's really difficult to prove that information. Just the records from back then is not very good. So it's very difficult to really pinpoint if that really was the same person or not. Mm. For example, the 1910 and 1911 attacks were not committed with an axe. They were committed with a butcher knife.
Yes.
So that is a major difference. But one of the biggest things that makes it seem like it might be connected is that much like all of the attacks that happened in 1918 and 1919, they were all on Italian immigrants who owned their own grocery stores. They happened in the middle of the night. They were bludgeoned in their faces. Very similar to the Axeman of New Orleans attacks. So could be connected, but we're not entirely sure. So moving on from that. So of course the Axeman of New Orleans was a serial killer from New Orleans, Louisiana, and it's surrounding areas like Gretna, which is part of, it's not necessarily part of New Orleans proper, but it's, within the same, it's just over the bridge. It's really close. And they have one attack that happened at the end of 1917 that they mentioned in one of the podcasts that I was listening to, but I don't have that information right in front of me. So we're going to go with the attacks that started in 1918. And again, we'll link to this podcast that had more information in case you wanted to listen to more.
Yeah. Morbid does an episode too. I was listening to their episode earlier.
Yes, I did listen to that one too. It's very good.
They're thorough.
Yes, they are. With all of the Axemen... Oh, sorry, what were you going to say?
Oh, I was just hearing, I need to check out Red Handed because everybody says that they're like really well researched as well.
Oh, okay. That's good to know. Yeah, I can't remember the name of the podcast that I was listening to earlier today. I think it was Most Notorious, I think was the name of the podcast.
I'll have to look that one up.
And they had a writer that was a guest on the show, and she had done a lot of research, had gone to New Orleans itself and looked up all of the different newspaper reports and coroner's reports and everything. And so she has a lot of information on those earlier attacks than I've heard anywhere else. So it was really good. Again, we'll link to that information so that you can listen to it. But yeah, most of the Axemen of New Orleans attacks, they were all committed on Italian immigrants that lived in the New Orleans area and that owned their own grocery store type of little shop. Mm-hmm. And this is back when we didn't have refrigerators yet. So you would go to the little corner store that was closest to where you lived several times a day to buy the food that you needed. because you didn't have a refrigerator at home to keep anything cold. You only had like a small ice box at best. So these little corner stores were everywhere, and they were very popular. And at this point in time, I think they said that it grew from being 7% Italian immigrant owned to eventually becoming 50% Italian immigrant owned within a decade in the early 1900s. So a lot of Italian Americans were opening their own grocery stores, little corner stores at this time, and they were really impacting the market a great deal. So a lot of these little stores were owned by Italian Americans, and all of the victims of the Axeman of New Orleans were Italian immigrants. Now, I think this, I wanted to look into this, and I didn't have time today, and I feel really bad about that, because I wanted to look up when it was that they originally started Columbus Day.
I like to call it Fuck Columbus Day.
Yeah.
Like, literally, I don't have my planner with me. If I did, I'd show you guys. I literally write the word fuck over Columbus Day every year.
But originally, the holiday started because there was a lot of negative feelings towards Italian American immigrants. And they started Columbus Day as kind of a propaganda to be like, hey, we like Italians, remember? They helped like discover America.
1971.
1971?
I'm sorry. Let's see.
Like, that sounds wrong.
Designated Columbus Day on national holiday in 1934.
34, okay, that sounds.
But it used to be celebrated on October 12th. It was in 71 that it was designated the second Monday in October.
Oh, okay.
And that was President Franklin D. Roosevelt who designated it a holiday.
Okay. Yeah, so this would have been a little bit earlier than that, but as you can imagine, we already had some negative feelings towards Italian immigrants, and it only got worse to the point where in the 30s they decided to make Columbus Day a holiday specifically to try and garner goodwill towards Italian immigrants.
Just hilarious because he never ever stepped foot on the U.S. soil.
Right. Okay, so if we get into the victims here. So the first victim in 1918 was Joseph Maggio and his wife, Catherine Maggio.
Which I believe I may have some pictures of them. If I do, I'll include it on the social media packet.
Perfect. So Joseph Maggio was an Italian grocer, and he and his wife, a lot of the places where you would have like this little corner grocery store, sorry, they would have like a room or two above the grocery store where they lived, or else in the back of the store. So either in the back or on top, they would have their own living quarters that were attached to the grocery store. And that was the case with Joseph and Catherine. And I believe on one of the podcasts that I listened to today, they said that Catherine was only 16 years old. That she was a very, very young bride. No, sorry, that's the wrong one. That was the victim from 1917, and I can't remember their names because I don't have the information on them. They're not listed as like the canon victims. So I'm sorry, Catherine was not 16 years old. So they were sleeping alongside each other in their home at the corner of Upper Line and Magnolia Streets. And the killer broke into their home, proceeded to cut their throats with a straight razor, and then bashed their heads in with an axe, perhaps in order to conceal the cause of death. Joseph survived the attack long enough to be found, but died while waiting for the ambulance to arrive. Catherine, on the other hand, her throat was so deeply cut that her head was nearly severed from her shoulders. They were found about 2 hours later by Joseph's brothers that also lived with them. But they had been out. Jake and Andrew were their names. They had been out partying because Andrew had just joined the Navy. So they were home, but they were very drunk and didn't hear the initial attack, but later on heard weird groaning noises, and they went to go see what was going on and found the two victims and called the police. At first, the police thought that they might have been the ones that committed the crime, in part because the straight razor that was used belonged to Andrew Maggio. He was a barber.
Mm-hmm.
And he had brought the straight razor home to be like resharpened and to like fix a little nick in it. And that was the weapon that was used for the attack. But all of the attacks from the Axeman, he would find weapons at the residence and use those in the attack. So even if it was belonging to Andrew Maggio, that doesn't mean that he was the one that committed the crime. And the police weren't able to find any other evidence against them, so they eventually released Andrew and Jake, and never were able to find much information on who it was that attacked them to do any other arrests at that time. The next victim, okay, and so that occurred on May 23rd, 1918. The next attack was about a month later, June 27th, 1918, and it was Louis Bessemer and his mistress, Harriet Lowe. Sorry. I had COVID. That's part of why I was not available for the last few episodes.
Yep.
So I'm better, but I still have a bit of a cough. So with Louis Bessemer and Harriet Lowe, a lot of people thought that Harriet was Louis's wife. He was married to someone else, and she was out of town. Harriet was his mistress. And again, they were sleeping in the quarters in the back of his grocery. He was, again, an Italian immigrant.
Mm-hmm.
And let's see. So he was struck with a hatchet above his right temple, which resulted in a possible skull fracture. Lowe was hacked over the left ear and found unconscious. When police arrived, they found that they were both in a puddle of their own blood and bleeding from their heads. So the hatchet belonged to Bessemer and was found in the bathroom of the apartment. He said he was sleeping when he was bashed with the hatchet. They arrested a man that was employed in Bessemer's store a week before the attacks, but for some reason had been no longer employed there. But they couldn't find any evidence to prove him guilty, so they had to let him go. No money or valuables were removed from the home, so they couldn't say that it was due to a robbery. Let's see. And so Harriet Lowe kept saying different things about what she saw that night and who it was that attacked her. But they weren't sure how accurate any of her recollection was because she was pretty badly beaten. She did go in for surgery because the side of her face had become paralyzed, and she went in for surgery to get that fixed and died as a result of the surgery. But before she went in for surgery, she said that it was Louis Bessemer himself that attacked her and not someone else that had broken into the house. They did arrest Louis Bessemer at one point, but they didn't have enough information to hold him so they released him as well. In the podcast I was listening to earlier, they did talk about this one a little bit, and the writer that they had as a guest on the show, she was saying that she believed that this was not the Axeman of New Orleans and that it was in fact Louis Bessemer. That she believed that there was an altercation between the two of them and that Harriet hit Louis with the hatchet first and then he lost his temper and attacked her. And she admitted that once she was in the hospital and felt safe, but still died from the resulting surgery of trying to fix her paralyzed face.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't survive surgery back then.
Right. So then the next attack was on August 5th, 1918. The victim was Anna Schneider. She was 8 months pregnant and only 28 years old. And she woke up to find a dark figure standing over her, and she was bashed in the face repeatedly. She was discovered after midnight by her husband, who was returning late from work. She claimed that she remembered nothing of the attack and gave birth to a healthy baby girl 2 days after the incident. Nothing was stolen from the home. She was likely attacked with a lamp that had been on a nearby table. They did make an arrest of a man named James Gleason, but he was later released due to complete lack of evidence.
That was something with the Axeman of New Orleans, is that he used weapons that were on the property.
Right.
And it wasn't just an axe, it's just the axe is what was most sensationalized.
Right.
But he would use what was already there and then he would leave it behind.
Exactly. And so it made it a lot harder to track him because they couldn't track the weapon back to him. He would leave the weapon there, so it's not like they could find someone with the weapon because he left them at the scene of the crime. In 1918, they didn't have like a great sorry. They didn't have a great way to look up fingerprints. So they may have taken fingerprints from the weapons, but that doesn't mean that they had fingerprints to necessarily match them up to very well.
Yeah, and it's not like now we have an international database. They didn't have that.
Yeah, they didn't have that back then.
They didn't have computers back then, people.
So then the next attack was only 5 days later on August 10th, 1918, and it was on Joseph Romano. He was an elderly man that lived with his two nieces, Pauline and Mary. Pauline and Mary woke up to the sound of commotion in the room where their uncle lived, and so they entered the room and discovered that their uncle had taken a serious blow to his head, which resulted in 2 open cuts. The assailant was fleeing as they arrived, yet they were not able to distinguish much. I think they gave the best information of any of the victims, but they still didn't have have that much to go on. Just that he was dark-skinned, a heavy-set man who wore a dark suit and a slouched hat.
That's super generic.
Right. Romano was able to walk to the ambulance once it arrived, but he still died 2 days later due to the head trauma. The home had been ransacked, but nothing had been taken, so again, they couldn't say that it was due to a robbery. They found a bloody axe in the backyard and discovered that a panel on the back door had been chiseled away. That is also something that was one of the telltale signs of the Axeman.
Yes.
Is that he would chisel away a part, like the inner panels at the bottom of the back door, to either sneak in through the panel or put his arm through the panel and unlock the door. They would usually, when they would go to the victims, they would find that the houses were still locked. So either he had snuck through the panel, or he had unlocked the doorknob and then locked it again when he was leaving.
Mm.
Excuse me. So once again, they weren't able to really find anybody that fit this description. They didn't have anybody that they could arrest and really get any evidence on. The next victim was Charles Court Miglia, his wife Rosie Court Miglia, and their baby, or 2-year-old daughter Mary Court Miglia.
Oh, don't hit the kids.
So Charles was again an Italian immigrant. He lived with his wife and daughter. They were the ones that were in Gretna, so just over the bridge from New Orleans, over the Mississippi River. And they were on March 10th, 1919. And the neighbors heard screams coming from their house and rushed across to see what was going on. Basically, Charles was laying on the floor, bleeding profusely. His wife and daughter had also been attacked. Their daughter, Mary, did die from the attack. Rosie was holding Mary when they came to find them.
So awful.
Having also been attacked. And Rosie made claims that it was their landlord, Orlando Giordano, and his 18-year-old son, Frank. And so Orlando was a 69-year-old man and in too poor of health to have committed the crimes. And they think that Frank Giordano was too big. He was 6 feet tall, more than 6 feet tall, and weighed over 200 pounds. And they don't think that it was possible for him to have snuck through the panel in the door.
He's trying to shove a St. Bernard through a dog door.
Yeah. So at first they were arrested, but they had no information to keep them on, so they were released. At first they would be found guilty. They went to trial and were found guilty and sentenced to hang. Charles was not convinced that they were the attackers and actually left Rosie over her accusations. And she eventually announced that she had falsely accused them out of jealousy and spite, so they did not end up getting hanged and were released from prison.
Well, at least she eventually copped to it, so
right.
There's something.
Now, at this point is when we get to the letter, which would have been 3 days after this attack. This letter that the Axeman sent to the Times-Picayune newspaper, which reads, "Esteemed mortal, they have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he who I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rifle me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not assume me, but not only amuse me, but his satanic majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But please tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy, the Axeman.
I need to start all of my correspondences with esteemed mortals now.
Esteemed mortal.
Esteemed mortals. You know, I could mention a worse spirit, except you don't say his name.
Right.
Everybody knows. If you know, you know. I can't say his name. But if you know, you know.
So at that point, that particular Tuesday night, every club in New Orleans was packed playing jazz music. And there were many families that had paid jazz musicians to play at their homes well into the night. Everybody just terrified, but partying anyway.
Mm.
And no murders happened that evening because everybody was partying and listening to jazz music as they had been instructed. Sorry.
I need to remember to send you some tea. By the time it gets there, you'll probably be better, but whatever. I should send you some tea anyway.
So that was in March of 1919. The next attack was not until August 10th of 1919. The victim was Steve Boca, a grocer, and he was attacked in his bedroom as he slept. He woke in the night to find a dark figure looming over his bed, and upon regaining consciousness, he ran into the street to investigate the intrusion and found that his head had been cracked open. The grocer ran to the home of his neighbor, Frank Janusa, where he lost consciousness and collapsed. Nothing had been taken from the home once again. A panel on the back door of the home had been chiseled away. Boca recovered from his injuries but could not remember any details of the trauma. The attack took place after the emergence of the infamous Axeman letter. The next victim was on September 3rd of 1919, and the victim's name was Sarah Lauman, and she was only 19 years old. The neighbors came to check on her, who lived alone, and broke into the house when she did not answer. They discovered her lying unconscious in her bed, suffering from a severe head injury and missing several teeth. The intruder had entered the apartment through an open window and attacked the woman with a blunt object. A bloody axe was discovered in the front lawn of the building. She recovered from her injuries but couldn't recall any details from the attack. And then the last victim was Mike Pepitone, who was attacked on the night of October 27th, 1919. His wife was awakened by a noise and arrived at the door of his bedroom just as a large axe-wielding man was fleeing the scene. Mike Pepitone had been struck in the head and was covered in his own blood. Blood spatter covered the majority of the room, including a painting of the Virgin Mary. Mrs. Pepitone, the mother of 6 children, was unable to describe any characteristics of the killer. We're not sure why it is that the attack stopped after that date. There are speculations that he could have gone to jail after that for something else. There are also speculations that he could have died from the Spanish influenza that was going on at the time. But no other. The Spanish influenza was bad, and it was bad in New Orleans for sure.
It was. They'd reported like 4,000 deaths inside of one day.
Right.
It was really bad.
Now, as far as who the Axeman could have been, there is the most often quoted suspicion is that it was a man named Joseph Mumfree. He was a man that was shot to death in Los Angeles in December of 1920 by the widow of Mike Pepitone, which was the last known victim.
Mm.
But there's not a lot of information about this. And if you try and look into the information, it's hard to find who Joseph Mumfree was, and finding any information on Mike Pepitone's widow being in Los Angeles to kill him. So that could just be a made-up story that didn't actually happen. From what I was reading and doing my research, there were some that were like, oh yeah, this is definitely what happened. And then there were some that were like, we can't find any evidence to back this up. So
that's fun with older stories like that.
Right. But yeah, basically that is the story of the Axeman of New Orleans.
I'm gonna look up some stuff about him that the rumor of him, actually being this supernatural being.
Right.
I want to see if I can find some specifics on what people were saying. Axeman of New Orleans.
It's funny living in New Orleans as well that sometimes I will see people's doors and think, yeah, Axeman could chisel through that. And I'm like, no one else is thinking these weird things like me. I'm just a strange creature. But I do. I look at doors and think, could the Axeman chisel through that one? I wonder.
The more you study true crime, the weirder it gets, the weirder it makes you.
Right.
So, let's see. I'm looking at this website here to see New Orleans ghosts, to see what they have to say about it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is... Oh yeah, I wanted to get that. It's a book by Chris Farnsworth, Red, White, and Blood. Oh, I totally forgot that American Horror Story, Coven, that season, they did a take on the Axemen of New Orleans, which is obviously highly fictionized.
Right.
But fictionalized. Fictionized, that is not a word, hun. So it's something that's kind of fun along that whole spectral branch.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just trying to get through all of this stuff. So how is New Orleans these days?
It's doing all right. Everybody has Omicron, but
Mm-hmm. So it happens with big cities.
It's true.
This is a good time for me to plug. Get vaccinated, people. Holy shit. Yeah, I learned recently that only 67% of Americans are vaccinated. I'm like, what are we even doing over here?
Right.
What are we doing? I don't know.
I got it, and I was vaccinated and had the booster already.
Yeah, I just got my booster earlier this week. So, because I had surgery and then I got the flu, so I had to wait. But yes, I am now boosted. But we're still taking precautions. We're we're not fucking around with this stuff. Too many people are getting it, and too many people have lost loved ones with this. So, hailing back to the Spanish influenza and the numbers there, they didn't have vaccines.
Right.
Well, I think they had smallpox vaccine by then, I believe.
I think so. They
because
were
that one
working
was
on a
one of the
vaccine for the
earliest.
Spanish influenza, but I don't think they had a good working one.
Yeah, they didn't know too much about virology back then, yes. But with the smallpox, they were really able to find something effective by finding out that all of these people who worked with cows weren't getting smallpox. And that's when they discovered that cowpox is very similar to smallpox, but it doesn't really make humans sick. But if you infect somebody with cowpox, it inoculates them against smallpox.
Okay.
And those were the first vaccines. It was a scratch. They'd give you a scratch and put some pus from the cowpox on there. But yeah, we're very lucky to live in the age we do now and have the technology we do. But unfortunately, we're still seeing those super, super high numbers. I have a friend who lives in Australia who was saying how now Australia is getting hit the way that America and other nations got hit because they reopened their borders.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very sad. Okay, so now we're getting into where I finally got down to where they were talking about the ghosts. So let's see. The house of Joseph Maggio and his wife. Catherine is said to be haunted by their remnants. On certain nights near the area, people have reported screams and shrieks. Let's see, from March 13th to the 15th, it is a NOLA tradition to play jazz in most pubs, clubs, and disco at least once a night in order to ward the Axeman's fury. It doesn't matter if it's a honky tonk, a goth club, or the swankiest highfalutin dinner hall, you will hear the beat of Miles Davis or his cronies at least once during those nights. You live there.
I have
How's it?
not noticed that, but most of it's been shut down during those days. So, like, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think. The first March that I lived here was in 2020, so everything was shut down because of COVID. So,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure how true that is or not because I haven't been able to go out in the Marches that I've lived here.
Yeah. When things chill out and start going back to celebrations, going back to normal and stuff, you'll have to let us know.
Mm-hmm.
You'll have to. If they do it, go around, like walk down the street, take a video for us.
Definitely.
We want to hear this tradition. The hospital where Joseph Romano was treated is said to be haunted by the fella's restless spirit. It's a hospital. You're going to tell me there's one freaking ghost in it?
Right?
No, thank you. I live out where Asylum 49 is. I know about haunted hospitals. Don't mess with that, man. According to local legend, the aptly named Haunted Hotel of Nola, not a portmanteau, but the actual name of the hotel, is the location believed to be where the Axeman hid between picking off his victims. This is the place where he slept during his murder sprees. The natives believe that his ghoulish specter remains at the hotel. I want to know why they think that that's where he was.
Yeah, I want to know how they know that.
Hang time. I'm going to click on that in a minute. In the back of the hotel, there's a quaint courtyard with a strange dark vibe. Visitors have claimed to have seen wandering shadows, pools of blood, capture strange EVPs, which, for those of you who don't know, is an electronic voice phenomenon,
Mm-hmm.
which is basically ghosts on tape, ghost voices on tape. which to which I have one word. Well, I guess it's two words. Audio matrixing. When our ears hear things that they can't understand, they try to decipher them and they put them into known categories. So you'll hear things that aren't necessarily there because your mind is tricking you, trying to make sense out of the words, out of the noise that it can't understand.
Mm-hmm.
For some people like me, where I have auditory processing disorder and I have misophonia, I hear stuff in white noise all the time. I especially hear music when my swamp cooler is going during the summer. Sometimes I'll be like, oh my gosh, the neighbors are playing their stupid music, and I'll swear I can hear music and singing, and it's just the swamp cooler. So let me tell you how much I trust EVPs. Look, I believe in ghosts. I've had my own experience. I don't think I if it's captured on camera or captured on a recording, I'm just like bullshit every time. So, and they even experience bizarre electrical hiccups with their cell phones. It's an old ass building. Of course they do. Do you have any idea what wiring does? Old wiring does? Oh my gosh. New Orleans has a chupacabra.
What?
What? It's called the Grunch.
The Grunch?
Yeah, you need to look into this for us.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. John and Wayne Carter, Nola's Killer Vampires. Okay, those are 2 episodes we need you to do. We need you to do one on the Grunch, and we need you to do one on John and Wayne Carter.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'm going to go here, and I'm going to click on this link to the haunted hotel and see what they have to say about this. I'm very curious about why they think that the Axemen hung out there. Just want to know. Ghost City tours, directions, pictures, about. So this is the hotel's official website I'm looking at. And I'm trying to see like why they thought the Axemen lived or hung out there. Confirmed reports have verified the Axemen lived in the hotel during the murders. What confirmed reports?
Yeah, how would they know that
Let's
if we
see
don't
your
even know who it
fucking
was?
sources. Renting one of the back rooms in the slave quarters, the Axeman was the handyman of the property and led a very unassuming life. He was never apprehended by authorities. However, in March 1919, the New Orleans newspaper received a letter from the Axeman, which read in part, we already read that. So they're saying that this handyman that lived on the property was the Axeman.
Okay.
And they're saying that while remodeling a few years ago, we found a bloodied axe in the corner of the old attic. It is now on display on the lobby for hotel.
That doesn't mean he was the Axeman.
He left all of his shit behind. It says, are you brave enough to stare in awe at the Axeman's instrument of death? He left all of his murder weapons behind. They're not in your hotel. Oh my gosh. No.
I don't buy it. I don't.
I mean, if it gets the tourists in, you do you. You do you. Oh, we found a rusty axe. It definitely has blood on it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. I can't even with that. I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm so stinking tired, but I'm going to be laughing about that for a while. God, can you imagine? Oh, we found a bloody axe in New Orleans. And
what about it?
What? If you own a hotel in the city, you should at least know how grotesque and macabre the city's history is.
Right.
That axe, if it does have blood on it, which I want to see some fucking DNA testing.
Right.
If it does have blood on it, why am I getting... This is weird. I'm getting like noise on my headphones.
Oh, weird.
Why am I getting excess noise on my headphones? Where's this coming from?
It's the Axeman.
It's like there's an entire, like there's a podcast playing in the background or something.
Weird.
I don't understand what this is doing. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream there because we're almost done. And for some reason, I'm getting interference over my headphones.
Okay.
And I need to make sure that's not going on to our other channels. So we will see you guys next week. I don't remember what we're doing next week, but we'll put it out there on our social media. You guys will be able to see it. All right. I'm really curious as to where this noise over my headphones is coming from.
Yeah, that's weird.
What the heck? I know what happened. Okay. Morbid was trying to play over my headphones. And they should be connected to my computer and not to my phone, but whatever. Okay, so we will see you guys next week. Thank you for joining us. Same time, same place. Remember, be a bitch.
Carry a big stick.
And don't get murdered.
Bye.